That's exactly it. You realize that all these people that you put on this whatever pedestal are just like you, and they also have doubts at every stage. They also have fears. They also have struggles, like their projects have breakdown, like they have technical problems, they have challenges. But the difference, like you said, is that they blinders on and they keep going until the end.
Welcome everyone. This is the Human Library Podcast. Your hosts Mehdi, Adriano, and Aslan. Today we have a very special guest. We have Nada. She's a creative soul, a brand strategist, and on a personal level, she's a very good friend of mine. Nada, very happy to have you in the podcast.
Very happy to be here as well.
Loneliness is basically not knowing how to stand yourself, your thoughts and your conscience. Probably the most feared emotion in our society, but I think it's the one that we need to face the most to grow.
So, the best way to do it is to introduce you to the audience. And I would like to hear from you if you can walk us through your academic background. How did you discover your passion regarding doing documentations, making videos, and your creative journey in general?
Sure. So my educational background or academic background is in media production. I did my bachelor's back in Morocco in media production and communications. And after that, I came to Barcelona to do my master's in digital marketing. So that's why right now what I do is kind of a mix between marketing and brand. So yeah, that's my educational background. But I think that the creative part of my whatever I do, of course, has been there since the beginning. And how did I? So the question is how I ended up doing what I do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would start by giving a little bit of context of what I do right now. Like Mehdi introduced me, I work full-time as a brand strategist in a software company. And on the side, my, let's say, hobby or my passion is to make videos, to produce videos that we're going to talk about later. That started, the side projects part started being a real thing for me, I would say 2 years ago. Of course, throughout my academic background, I had chances to experiment and create and do video projects as projects in classes or at my first job. But I would say 2 years ago, that's when it started being my own thing. And I started doing it for myself and not for a class, not for a company, not for anyone else, but just something that I would do to make myself happy. I don't know which direction you want me to go, Mehdi. Maybe you can ask me another question and I can tell you more. Or if Adriano or Aslan have,
I do have a question for you. It sounds very
Yes.
cool, by the way, how like you went from finding a personal creative side. So that's actually where my question will go to. It's very easy to say. It's very easy to see that you're a very creative individual, right? And also because we know you, so that's actually very cool. But I mean, where did you came up with the creativity, like on what you do on your videos? Like, it's a very personal thing, right? As you said, where is this coming from? Like, where is this nada from? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question. I think I have to understand where does it really come from. Honestly, rationally, it's really I can't answer that question rationally. I would say
Fair.
that's something that's been there forever. It's just something that's like you don't even think about. I think since I remember, I always felt like there is a part, there is something else that I needed to do. Like I have to study, I have to do this, but there is this thing that's always been there that I need to that I need to also do. And I think as I grew up, I started trying to define it more and more, trying to figure out what that thing is. And I would say it's a very impulsive thing. I don't think it's something that I think about or comes from this. It's just there. This kind of, I don't know if I can call it need, but it's this urge to like
Like
create
a
something.
feeling.
It's a feeling. It's like, I would say also it's a way to express yourself. I mean, art, of course, or creation is obviously, everyone knows it's a form of expression. And I feel like for me at least, the way I lived my life, I feel like there was a part of me that needed to be expressed in certain way. And I think that's the way I found to do it for myself. So to answer your question, um, where does this thing come from? I don't know. It's impulsive. It's just like yeah.
Okay, fair. I do have a follow-up question to that question.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
tell me.
I think this might be a little bit easier to answer, hopefully. When did you decided or started to express this through a camera? Like, was this
Oh.
from a young age that you saw a camera and you were like, this is a very cool instrument that I can showcase what the fire inside of me is burning for, or something like that? Or is this something like more recent as well?
This is a cool question. Because we usually don't really pay attention to like what happens in our childhoods, and then you realize something and you're like, wait, maybe this is related to this, and this memory comes from this. So I do have like a couple of memories of me doing stuff related to camera and video in general. I think one of the memories I have of me being very young, I used to be very I loved like gadgets. I loved lit phones, and the camera was like my favorite. You know, we had the one that opens. I mean, my
Yeah.
aunt had like the big camera, and that was very like off limit. You don't touch it.
Yeah.
And then after that came the small ones, you know, the ones that open, the handy cam. And I remember I was very fascinated by that. And also when I was very young, I was not allowed to play with it too much. So I would only use it in or like some big celebration. And that was for me the best day of my life. And I think the second memory I have was more specifically around, now I can call it editing. But back then, we had a laptop. It didn't have internet, but it had Movie Maker. And for some
Oh, I know.
reason, I had like on my laptop, it was empty. I had a music video of, I remember a Black Eyed Peas music video for some reason.
So cool.
And I had somehow got High School Musical, the movie. So I had these two pieces of like video and I had Movie Maker. And I don't know, the only memory I have is taking this music video, putting it in Movie Maker and doing stupid shit with it all day. I would just like cut this part, make Fergie like sing in a weird way, slow it down, add things. And it was super fun. There was no output, there was no like outcome, but it was a really fun activity for me. So those are like the very early memories that I have of this. And somehow as I grew, I don't remember how, but I always like, I didn't have a camera, but I was always drawn to people who do this. I was always trying to be friends with the people who have like, who I don't know, study film. Whenever I see a camera, I just like, I'm super drawn to it. So slowly I found myself very like attracted to this thing. And like there was no moment where I was like, oh, this is my thing. I was just like naturally just drawn to it. And when the time came to choose what I want to study, I wanted to study film, but it was a little bit hard to convince everyone else. So the closest thing that is to study something like more under communications, media production, and that my
Technical as
parents
well.
would accept. Exactly. And that you can have more like careers, like more diversified, say,
Yeah,
or
the art
hiding.
is nice.
Exactly. So, and that's why I chose that. But it's always been something that I knew was my thing somehow. Yeah. I don't know if
I
that
see.
answers the question.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Thank you. That was very
I,
cool.
I have a question around that a little bit. Also, by the way, you kind of described some aspects of my childhood as well, because
Yes.
we also had the
Yeah.
camera that I remember my dad bought, and I was just playing with it. I remember the first day I don't know why they gave. I was just like walking with it, filming the floor. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. I think there was not a lot of technology back then. So whenever there's a
yeah,
new gadget, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like so
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. And I think like when we're young, like we're kids, we always have those kind of innocent fascinations with things. Like, and usually, like I was drawing a lot when I was a kid, and but I think then what happens to a lot of people is they kind of forget that, or they during the process of growing up, they kind of it just gets lost. You know,
Yeah.
it kind of life just beats it out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
life happens, right?
So it's like very interesting. So I'm curious, have you had that moment where, you had this kind of obsession, like fascination when you were a kid, and as you're growing up, when you go through a schooling system, usually it's like things happen where like,
You put
it's
your mind on a cube.
it's challenging, I guess, to keep it going. But have you had that kind of a moment where you had a pause or it was reignited later, or how? I'm just
Yeah,
curious if you went through that
totally.
phase.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think that, like I told you, I have those memories, but then from that until like high school,
Hmm.
there wasn't much going on in this area.
I see.
Because when you're a kid, you're just exploring, but then you have to go to school. You have to
Yeah,
like live a life that has very like
yeah,
Yeah.
rules. And you don't know that that's something that's like your passion or something.
yeah.
Because as a kid, you had that experience, but it's like, okay. So I guess from, I would say primary school, secondary school, there was not much going on there because it was not something that I was aware of
Hmm.
until I would say high school. That's when you start understanding things, I would say. Like you start
Hmm.
watching movies, start making sense of what's going on in the world,
Hmm.
what is art, what's a form of expression, and that's where I guess you have the crisis. So I would say, yeah, for a lot of years there was not much going on there. Or maybe I forgot. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And when was the moment you kind of were like the moment of this like realizing that you want to do it and intentionally going towards it?
I think there were stages. Like I said, after high school, I knew that that was something I really loved, but I had to compromise. So I think that was the first stage of I want to do this, but I'm scared. So I'm gonna do
Yeah.
it in a safe, protected way. And
Uh-huh.
that's why I went for a degree that is related, but that keeps my options, open.
Hmm.
So I would say that's like the first time, but I did it in a, again, protected way. And then I think the second point is when I started recently, like 3 years ago, when I was like, I want to do this for myself and I'm going to commit. I'm going to dedicate time. I'm going to buy a camera. I'm going to like invest in this thing. Again, I'm doing it still in a safe way, because I still have my full-time job. I'm still doing it on the side. But I would say this time was more like jumping that idea of like being scared of giving it like really invest in and saying I'm just gonna do it and see what comes out of it. So I would say like 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, that was the second turning point in this area.
Okay, I see. And I think like it would be interesting for a lot of viewers as well to learn a bit more about the projects, or like what was the first one, for example, that you kind of did, and what just talk a little bit about what drove you to do it and how did it happen? Yeah.
Yeah,
The inspiration behind it.
the inspiration. Where did it come from?
Yeah, that's actually cool to hear.
Yeah, I would assume that we're talking here about the first one that I've done in this new era, let's call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because before that I did stuff, but currently I'm very detached from what I did like
I see.
5 years ago. So the project is License to Feel, and to give a little bit of context, it's a 3-episode, very micro mini documentaries, let's say. I don't know if we can call them that, but it's basically real people talking about real things. It's a real interview. And it's about feelings or emotions. Each episode talks about a specific emotion, and it's specifically about emotions that are negative, that people label as negative. And the whole idea is to make peace with those emotions and understand that all the emotions have a purpose, even the ones that we are scared of, let's say. So the 3 emotions were loneliness, rejection, and fear. And yeah, what inspired this? If you watch the videos, you would think that it's a very external thing. It's like about other people, because it's literally other people talking about their experiences. But where the project came, I think it came from a very personal and very internal part. I would say how it started is I was going through a rough period for a certain time, and I think the minute I started recovering from that, I realized that the biggest realization I had is that the only way I was able to get through those emotions is to sit through them and feel them and be with them and make peace with them. You know, I had a period where I felt lonely, I felt rejected, I felt scared. Like, okay, I was lonely, but that was okay. I survived. So I think part of my recovery is to make something out of that. And I guess this ties back to your question, Adriano, where it comes from. For me, it comes from a very personal space of to kind of process this, or to kind of like archive it, to kind of put it in a folder and put it in my brain and be like, okay, this is solved. I need to make something out of it. Mm-hmm. So that's where this came from. The moment I started feeling better, I was like, I need to do something with this. And I started thinking, how can we talk about this? Why are we so scared of feeling those things? And yeah, that's where the idea came from. And then after that, a lot of brainstorming, thinking how to approach it, thinking how to execute it. And yeah, that's the story.
I want to jump in here. It was very interesting to hear that License to Feel. By the way, for the audience, I recommend to check Nada's Instagram. We're gonna put it in the description box, and check License to Feel. It's a very cool project. But it's very cool and interesting to hear that it was your way of like a self-expression, artistic form, it looks like in the beginning that you're giving a platform to the guests that you had in the videos to discuss their feelings, but it's very interesting to see that it was also a way for you to express yourself through these people and through these projects. What I wanna touch on here is art is therapeutic. I remember watching an interview by a rapper called Kirk Dye, and he went through some struggles with his rap group, and then he released a whole album talking about the issues and everything. And when they were discussing everything, he was like, I couldn't keep it personal. I had to heal. So music was a way for him to heal from these events. He released a whole album talking about literally all the issues that he had with Slaughterhouse. That was the group that he was in. So based on the events that you had, License to Feel was also a license for you to heal. It was therapeutic for you to work on these projects, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you want to say something about it?
No, go ahead.
I was about to ask you another question about the creative process. So you talked about working on License to Feel and the fact that it's a self-expression, but how does it work in terms of, I have a concept in mind, I have an idea, I want to make a video out of it. Can you walk us through this creative process? How does it start? How does it end?
Yeah, it's this is another
I remember the meme,
$1 million question.
where it's like, you think it's straight, but then it's like,
Yeah, it's not a point-to-point line, right?
Exactly. It's not very linear. I think at the beginning it felt very like there was no process. Like when I just started, it felt like I was just trying things and throwing things and just like putting things together. But slowly, I feel like after, I don't know, a couple of years of trying to do this, I can see some sort of pattern. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would say there is no process. You just think of something and go and like figure it out. Right now, I can kind of see a sort of pattern in kind of stages, because I think the process is, of course, in what you do, but also in your mindset and where your head is. I think that's the most, the area where I notice the stages the most. I would say first stage is, figuring out what you want to do. And that's a very chaotic phase, because you're just sitting and trying to, whatever is going on in your brain, the mess that you have, all the ideas that are jumping around, wanting to get out, all the emotions, all of that, trying to go through that, filter it, figure out what matters the most to you at that moment, figure out the strongest emotion, figure out the thing that will get you the most excitement, and trying to filter through that and put it somewhere in a Google Doc, in a presentation, in a paper, somewhere. So I would say the first stage is, let's call it, I don't know, ideation. And that, like, I see it like this, that could take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't know. I have spent weeks sitting down every day and just like looking at a Word doc and just being like, what are we doing today? So I would say that's like the first stage. And then depending on whether I'm working with another person or it's a project that I'm doing on my own, usually I work with people, meeting this person and just talking, just discuss it. Usually we have an idea. If I'm doing it with another person, usually we have an idea, like a very broad idea of the direction, and we would just like talk. I would sit with them and just make them talk about that thing, until like I can find a direction. So that's the first stage, just like ideation, brainstorming, thinking. And then hopefully at the end of the stage, you have something. You have like that one thing that makes you go, that's it. That's it. And usually that's either an emotion, a thought, like an idea, a concept. It could be anything. A quote. I had some things start from like a quote. When I hear it, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I need to like transform it. So that's it. You have your thing, you have your idea, and then second stage, it's developing that idea. So how are we gonna take that one line thing and make something out of it, transform it into, I don't know, a 3-minute thing of video, images, sound, voiceover, whatever. How do you take that and make, like, branch it out, make a tree out of it? So that also is a long process. And I guess the next stages are basically execution. So once you have a clear idea of what you want to make, then comes the execution. And the execution, I like to, I think it's, for me at least, it's like 2 separate stages. You have the execution of the filming, so going out and just like doing stuff, and the editing. And these are 2 completely different mindsets, completely different like states of where you are creatively. Yeah, and these 2 are also the time you don't know, especially if you're working with another person. You gotta depend on their schedule. I have a full-time job. I need to film on weekends. It could take months. This is the stage that takes me a lot of time. Well, to film, it's really tough. And then the editing, that's pretty straightforward, putting everything together and creating something. So I would say the process it sounds like it's very like stages, but of course, you usually jump from here to here and here to here, and you could be editing and still conceptualizing, or you could be conceptualizing and already picking the song. And, you know, it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. You could be jumping from one to another while going through this. But this is overall right now with like, when I have the big picture, this is how I can put it into steps, let's say.
Amazing. I mainly asked
That's
because
nice.
I remember when I was in Barcelona, we were trying to collaborate on one project that you actually did. I
Yeah.
would say the ideation phase, and I saw the mood board, and it was very interesting to see the references and all the scenes that you had in mind. So I wanted to walk the audience also through what a creative mind would, how would work on a creative project, like making a video, for example, because sometimes it sounds very superficial and it sounds like the same formula for everyone. You go, you record, and then you edit. But it's not that way. It's also very personal to every creative. We don't follow the same formulas when it comes to artistic projects.
No, and like I said, it's very intertwined. Like I say it right now, and it seems like a linear thing, but it's very like, it's messy. It's very messy.
I do have a question for you.
Yes.
So this beautiful project, that the whole idea is to showcase your perspective with a third person of a feeling that you've been having, which is normally showcased as negative, right? But as you said before, like, feelings exist, so there is no such thing as a positive or negative feeling. It's just the reason behind it. So basically the question is that you want to showcase this type of negative feelings. How do you deal with your own negative feelings while doing these projects? Like, you know, self-doubt, thinking like, how will you like put it into like into a plane? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is very meta. Emotions within emotions. How do you deal with your emotions while talking about emotions? I love it.
Exactly.
That's a great question, because you're literally preaching something and at the same time struggling with it.
Yeah.
Like at the same time. That's a really good question. I think that's a thing that exists throughout all the projects, not just the emotions one. And it's a very real thing. It's a very present emotion throughout the whole process. I would say all the steps that I just described are kind of, there is self-doubt in every single step. Every day that I sit down and I open my laptop and I'm like, what are we doing today? All those ideas are like, you're never gonna get the right idea. This is terrible. This is stupid. All, those voices. And I guess you need to, this is, for me, in creating, this is the biggest challenge. This is the one challenge. If I had a magic wand and they would say, solve one thing, it would not be like edit in 5 minutes. It will not be film in 5 minutes. It will not be find an idea. It will be get rid of those voices, because it's a thing that you have at every stage. You need to overcome that voice in your head that tells you that this is not good enough, and just do it. Just execute it. And it's really, it's there because it's a process based on a lot of faith, because you don't know what will come out in the end. You have no idea. You have something, you have like an idea, something very abstract that you don't even know if people will relate to. You don't know if it's a good idea. You don't know if it's a good perspective. You have something very out there that you need to go through a whole thing to make it something else. And it's you need to have a lot of faith and a lot of belief to put in all that effort for something so unknown. So yeah, there is a lot of self-doubt and a lot of questioning and a lot of, is this really good at every step? I would say until until you release it and people say, oh, it's good. And you're still like, is it really good? Or are they just like trying to, so how do I deal with it? I don't have any tips, Adriano.
I was hoping you had.
fight with my demons. I fight with them every day. And I don't know. I guess it's just about
Keep going.
keep going and remember why you do this. For me, it's like, I try to remind myself constantly why I'm doing this, because I'm not doing it to make money. I'm not doing it so that people yes, it's nice that people can relate, but I'm not doing it to please anyone. I keep reminding myself, I'm doing it to express something that I have going on, to exteriorize something, to process something. So it doesn't matter if it turns out complete garbage. No one has to see it. We'll just hide it. And that's it. It's still, it's still gonna do its purpose, which is just for me to go through the process and just talk about all these things. So for me, this helps, telling yourself, it's okay. You're doing it for the process. It's fine. No one has to see it. What else? I think one tip for me that I recently realized, because I'm currently working on another project and I'm at the last stage. I'm at like the editing. And the editing is like, it's like, that's where you create the thing. That's really when you create it, because before then it's just images and sounds, and that's really when you put it together and you see it. And that's when that's when you see if the feeling is there. That's when you see if, yes, you got it. And I think a tip for me at this stage is to not look at other people's work, because that's like that's where you start comparing. That's where you're like, your work is not complete. You see your work in a baby stage and you start comparing it to like big productions, huge projects that are final, that have a whole team. And that's like, could get you stuck for a long time. So for me, I think this is my learning from this project, is when I get to this stage, I put my blinders on and I finish. I get to the finish line. I just go with my vision. At this stage, looking at references or inspiration or whatever is useless. It's just gonna like cloud your thinking and make you feel insecure. So just like go to the finish line, finish it, execute it, and then you can improve it. But yeah, I think this is a very important learning for me at this stage, to not let the self-doubt creep in. Is focus. Your goal is to finish right now. But yeah, yeah, that's my 2 tips.
Thank you. I have to say I love them. It makes it feel very human, which I think in an aspect as well, this project that you're doing is also to showcase that, right? That
Yeah,
at the end of the
exactly.
day, we are all humans and we have all this type of issue and we are all in the same level. So I loved it. Um, we did it. I think our first episode was actually about like the imposter syndrome.
Yes, I heard it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I love when you were like talking about this right now because I could relate in some level with these voices that you have inside your head when you're like basically like fuck, well, like this is not good enough. You're just fucking everything up, and the
Exactly.
whole yeah, and the whole concept of putting blinders, that I think that's really cool because sometimes you just need to do the stuff that you need to do to get it out there, and
Exactly.
like it will work by itself. So my follow-up question was like with imposter syndrome, but I think you have answered that. So I would like to ask just another thing. When it comes to the art itself, like when you're trying to showcase this beautiful type of human feeling in this like artistic expression of recording, I'm pretty sure this has a lot of meaning for you, but do you believe that art needs to have a meaning, that it has to showcase a purpose, or could it just be that it's just there?
Another $1 million question. All the
But
great
we're loving to
questions.
hear your perspective on it, basically.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's a discussion that I have with a lot of people. It's a very relevant and interesting question to understand what is art and what is not. This is like, the ultimate question. And does art need to be meaningful? I would say it's very subjective. Like, subjectively, from my perspective, I need the art to have some sort of depth. I need something that will make me think a little bit, that will
Okay.
make me reflect on something, that would move something in me. Something that's purely like a form, like purely aesthetic. I would say yes, I would watch it, I would listen to it, I would see it, but that's it. You move on. So I think to answer this question, we need to really understand what we mean by art and how we define art. And it's interesting because recently I was reading this book that talks about exactly this question. It's literally called "What is Art?" It's a book by Tolstoy, the Russian writer. It's interesting because he usually writes fiction, but this is a nonfiction where he really goes into this question like straight up. Like, it's called "What is art?" And he basically tries to answer this question, like what is valuable? Does it need to have a message? Does it need to be beautiful? Does it need to have a purpose? And in the end, I'm just gonna go straight to the conclusion. In the end, he says that art is considered art anything that successfully creates an emotion in the viewer or the audience that the author or the creator intended. So for instance, I want you to feel this emotion. If I create something that is able to make you feel that, I made art. So that's his definition, which I think I agree with, because I think that's kind of the purpose of art, is to make people feel things. It's not to tell you something. I could write it to you. I could write you a sentence, and the communication, like the transmitting the message. There are a lot of ways to transmit in a message. But what art does differently is to create an emotion and make you feel that message. It's not just make you understand it or rationally process it, but make you feel it. To have a meaning, but it also, I think primarily, it needs to make you feel something. It makes you go through an emotional experience more than an intellectual one. Yeah.
I really like that. Because I was thinking that, the way people define the word meaning is really important here,
Yeah.
because if you define it as art evoking some kind of an emotion, that's one thing. And then if you really want some kind of logical, rational understanding of it or explanation of it, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that a lot of the times people nowadays I think they've gotten a bit lazier or something, where you want the thing given to you,
Like spoon-fed, right?
why is this, like you're watching some video or something and you're like, well, I don't know, why is this here, or explain to me all of these little parts of it, but you're forgetting about just feeling it, just like feel the vibe, just turn off your brain for a bit and just feel, because
That's cool. Yeah.
if you're just always trying to be like, why did they make it like this, and it can be about any kind of art, like, and I think if you're a kind of a curious person, like you kind of want to know that, like with me, a lot of the times it's with like, there has been a long time I was fascinated with like fashion design, and I was always curious about some designers who they openly talk about why they chose certain like cuts or certain colors and all these things, and others don't.
Yeah.
And it's a very mysterious thing. So yeah, it's kind of, but I really like the feeling part of it, because it also makes, I think it opens up the art world to you in a different way if you go with that kind of mindset, rather than just if you look at a painting, for example, and you're like, okay, cool, like I want to understand it, but then no, you have to like just see what the vibes are here,
Yeah.
I do want to like just add a little bit of something, like,
Yes, please.
because you express like basically the feelings, that's actually it becomes a little bit more, in my opinion, it becomes a little bit more intense, it becomes a little bit more like emotionally tangible, you know what I mean? And also becomes more difficult to showcase or express, because then you're trying to interpret your view or what you went through while using somebody else and a different tool, trying to actually expose yourself into it, right? And like whoever is watching it, trying to deliver the message. So I do have another question. What would be a legit
Adriano,
blocker
I
when
wanna
it comes
I wanna jump
creating
in just to say my perspective
Alright,
on this
sure,
topic
sure.
as well. I would like to
Yeah,
contribute.
sure, sorry.
Because I had this thought for quite some time as well, thinking about what defines something as artistic, and does art have to be meaningful. So, as Nada said, there is an emotion behind it. The emotion doesn't have to be that deep. If you just look at an artistic piece and then you're like, oh, this shit it looks cool. There is no meaning behind it, but it looks cool for you. That's an emotion, right? So art should not be really defined by the fact that there is a reference behind it, there is a message, because there is a lot of pressure, and especially that's something I saw in rap music, for example. It's not meaningful if there is no message in rap music, for example. But there is the artistic piece of it as well. When you hear someone with dope lyrical schemes, with some, it's an art. It doesn't have to deliver a certain message. It doesn't have to tell you about history. These are things in books, for example. For example, I can watch The Joker on mute without really following up the stories, just for the cinematography of it, because the color grading, the scenes, they were amazing. They were very artistic, even if you don't get the message behind it. Or, for example, the paintings from the Renaissance. There are a lot of biblical references that I maybe do not get from my background, but when I look at some paintings, for example, I'm fascinated. This is very beautiful. This is very well done. So it's very good if it's a mix of both. If there is a meaning, you get it, and it's still artistic. but it should not be judged by not being meaningful or by not having a message behind it.
That's a really good point. I want to add on that. Another thing mentioned in the book is where the judgment begins. It begins on the level of what emotions this art is kind of created. And in every society, or let's say objectively, there are some emotions that are more valuable to a society or an individual more than others. For instance, feeling emotions like inspiration, ambition, hope, love. These are emotions that are, let's say, we could agree that they are more valuable than other emotions like, I don't know, feeling liked or feeling reckless or feeling too cool for things. And I think this is where, for example, nowadays there are discussions of this kind of, you mentioned rap, some kind of rap. It does create an emotion, but what emotion is it? Maybe it makes you feel like too cool to care about, serious things in your life. Maybe it creates an emotion of, I don't want to think about my problems. I just want to be like, whatever. I want to do drugs and whatever. I'm just making stuff up. But going back to the point, it's the judgment starts about those the values or the emotions that the art creates. So, and that depends, of course, on each one's individual values. So if I value, I don't know, ambition, inspiration more than just feeling, I don't know, content or feeling just happy for a moment, a rap song that makes me think and makes me like feel ambitious and makes me want to go do stuff is more artistic to me than something that just makes me like feel calm or feel like dancey or feel something more like slow, like short-term effects. So this is just to add on your point of why people judge something better than others. But in the end, according to Tolstoy, all of these are forms of art. It just depends whether this art serves kind of the right emotion or creates the right emotion or not.
Well,
That's
as
a
you
very
said in
good
the
point.
beginning, art is very subjective, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It depends in the end on each one's life, how they see life, their perspective of life, and what they want to achieve in their life. I think it's kind of a tool to make you align in the end with what you want to feel. For me at least, if I want to feel inspired, I want to feel motivated, I want to feel hopeful, I would go and watch things that make me feel this way.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's kind of a tool that makes you generate emotions, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super interesting also about when you were talking about you and Mehdi about being attracted to a certain type of art, at what times you're kind of attracted to it, because it can be something that, and that's a really good phrase. I like that. Like, I want to feel this way right now, or this is how I want to feel, because it can be different from your day to day as well. If your day to day can be different from the way you want to feel. So oftentimes, and I think it's very common that sometimes it can be the opposite, where you can be drawn to darker art, even though in your daily life you're not really living through those things.
It's like an escape. It's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
second
yeah.
reality you create. Yeah.
I think that
I,
the
I,
choice
I
the
don't know.
choice
For
of
me, in
the choice of music is, I think it's mood based. Like the music you would listen to
yeah,
in a night walk is not the same that you're gonna listen to in the gym, for example, because it's two different moods,
yeah,
right? So it's also
yeah.
about the
But
emotion
It's the
that you want to
emotion it
embrace
creates.
at that point. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
Go, Adriano.
The
Sorry.
nurture. Yeah.
No, don't worry. I had to say that at least for me, like in my own worldview, like e- even like if you can put in a way that life is meaningless, life, right? But that creates a meaning of life because there's no meaning in it, then it gives meaning to it. So for me, like for me to actually love it or like it or be like in tune to it, it has to have a meaning. It doesn't have to come from whoever is doing it or creating it, but it has to come within me as well. So that idea that, for example, artists now that I have to explain or conceptualize the entirety of the painting or whatever they're doing, I kind of understand it, but it's not my jam. Like I'm solely, totally talking like in my own perspective, people. So don't
Yeah,
crucify
yeah, yeah,
me.
yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't know. There has to be something. There has to be something that burns also inside of me when I'm looking, seeing, hearing. If not, it's not gonna have my attention. And that is for me, artists, basically. That's all I wanted to add.
I think there's a psychological component to this as well, if I can bring that. It's kind of like I have thought about this a while ago. I think art oftentimes helps us to think about things as well, or to explore certain emotions, because
To understand them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I think sometimes you may not understand why you may be drawn to a certain type of emotion or art, or art that produces that emotion. But you are drawn to it and you like it, but you don't really know why. And I think that I think it's more subconscious. You're thinking through things subconsciously when you're doing that kind of. It's a bit mind fuckery, but
Yeah.
basically it's kind of like you're drawn to it, and you're exploring certain emotions that are subconscious that you haven't brought into consciousness, and it kind of helps you to think through those as well. Yeah, and you can also, I think, a
I
lot of the
agree.
times in shadow exploration in Jungian psychology, one of the best ways is actually exploring art and looking through.
That's cool because also in art, in every type form of art, there's the sender and the receiver.
Yeah.
So it's how the artist wants to send the message that can be very various things, and how the person who sees the art receives it. So that's what makes it like in what I love about like very human type of art is that it becomes very like personal for both of them, whoever sends it and whoever receives it. And there's something deep, like I do like that. I am like, for me, it has to come like through like that. But I get the idea that the judgment of art has to be like, either, well, it cannot be judged. Everyone will have their own judgment or see it however they want to, or eradicate it from their own deep self. But I was just saying from my side, I guess.
From this idea that art creates a kind of emotion, I want to ask you, Nada, what are the, let's say, artistic things that you watch or listen to, and then it creates this emotion of you that I need to create something, or like it motivates you, it inspires you to be more creative or to work on one of these projects?
Oh, good question. I watch a lot of interviews with artists that I like, and just understanding their kind of journey and understanding how they think and listening to them. It's very inspiring. I watch a lot of things like I want to do. So whatever videos I do, but like 10 levels up. And that's like my main source of insecurity, but also motivation.
I get that.
That's like looking at where you want to be. What else? Music. Yeah, it's a mix of all of this. Yeah. But I really love listening or watching people that I look up to, and just sometimes just like humanize them. I don't know if that's the word. Just look at them as humans. That kind of creates a thing where it's like, I can do it too. They're humans just like
Yeah.
me. And hearing them talk about their lives, it kind of takes them down from that pedestal that we put artists in as like these whatever creatures so talented, and you just understand that they're very hardworking people. They're people who believe in themselves. They're people who put in the work, and you're like, okay, I can do that, I guess. I think that's a huge like driving force for Gov right now.
That's a very good point, because when you listen to artists speaking, for example, in podcasts, I saw Eminem talking in an interview with King Crooked, and he was telling him that when I invite you in a track, I have anxiety because I don't know what flow you're gonna bring to the song, and I'm thinking about how to keep up with your level. That's Eminem speaking. So whenever we see just the result, just the art at the end, we're like, oh, this is amazing. This person is very confident. Like, they do amazing work. But once you hear to
Yeah.
their struggles, like the one you were talking about, for example, for reference, like self-doubt, when you watch a video, for example, you're very
Yeah.
inspired by one of your projects, for example, but then if someone listens to you and they're like, we're pretty similar. I also have self-doubt. Maybe I just need to push a bit more to create something. Like, it becomes very, as you said, it's humanized.
Exactly.
Now you have a reference, you have an example, someone going through the same thing, but they just push a bit more to create something. So maybe I can do the same. It gives some kind of inspiration and motivation
Exactly.
to people.
Totally. Exactly. That's a really good point about self-doubt. Like, the most interesting thing from all the interviews I hear is that every single one of them struggles with that. Every single one of the artists have, except maybe Kanye West, but a lot of them,
That's because of a mental illness.
most of them are like,
It's fine.
yeah. But I admire his,
No,
how
he's
much he believes
amazing.
in himself. But
He's amazing.
but it's this struggle to balance the self-doubt with the confidence. Like, it's a sort of, like I said at the beginning, it's a faith in yourself. It's like, I know I have something, but at the same time, I think like I'm a useless little shit, and how to balance these two thoughts in your brain and get something out of it. But yeah, to go back to the point of humanizing, that's exactly it. You realize that all these people that you put on this whatever pedestal are just like you, and they also have doubts at every stage. They also have fears. They also have struggles, like their projects have breakdown, like they have technical problems, they have challenges. But the difference, like you said, is that they blinders on and they keep going until the end. So yeah,
I think
humanize
that's
your
how
idols.
that's how you also build confidence, because let's say there is self-doubt in every project you're working on, but you look back and you have like a track record. I see like 5 projects I managed to complete them, so I can push more and complete another one, and then that's how you become more confident. I think if we asked you to be in the podcast, for example, after working on only one project, you wouldn't have enough confidence to talk about your work, for
No.
example. But since you worked on many, now you feel that, okay, I can talk about my creative process because I've done it many times. So also repetition helps in the
Yeah.
creative process.
But sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say that it's also tricky. This exact thing could be both good and bad, because from experience, I can tell you that at some point after working for like 3 good things, the 4th one, you're like, I don't have it in me anymore. The expectations start growing and you start getting better. And then the more the expectations grow, the more anxiety you have about delivering up to those expectations. And you just get to a point where you're like, I was lucky with those 3 projects. That's all I had in me. This 4th one is not going to be that. And so, yes, it gives you confidence, but it also puts more pressure. So again, it's about the balance. It's about, finding a way to have those 2 thoughts together, but still going for it.
It's a blessing and a curse. It's like,
Exactly.
because you kind of wanna, especially if it came out really well, it's something you've done in the past, you kind of want to match it as well.
Exactly.
Like, you want it to be as good.
At the same level.
It's because for me, I've done that. Like, I just instantly think about articles that I've written. I don't write them as much anymore, but I've written some stuff before, and it's not really anything super, I would say, creative. It's about design. It's kind of investigative design articles, but The process is very much creative
Yeah,
process for me, where I come
for
up with
sure.
something, some idea, and I want to explore it. And yeah,
Yeah.
if something is really good, and then you're like, I want to match it, it's like that can be demotivating as well. You know, like I don't want to do it anymore. Like, fuck it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like you don't I don't want people to see me downgrade like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tricky. It's
It can
tricky.
maybe it's like also like a subconscious thing where it helps to, I don't know how, it's difficult, reprogram yourself somehow to where you're not having these kind of like you keep going, keep doing, like having this idea of like this blinders on where you're just like immune to these things. And because for me motivation can be a huge thing where like I feel like it affects my quality of the work that I
Yeah.
put out, you know? Like it can really mess up your belief in
Quality.
how good of a work you can do, you know? And it's like this kind of just untangle, separate this belief that, you know, what I'm feeling right now will not affect the work that I do, or like I don't know, it's hard, but it's been on my mind
Those
recently.
are the demons. The
Yeah.
demons we're fighting. I think also another way to kind of survive this or go through it is to try to always remember why you're doing this,
Yeah.
because we get stuck into the how are people going to react, because the way we measure that, of course, is how people relate to this. So it's really hard to keep this bigger purpose, that is why are you doing this in the first place. You're not doing this to please people, you're not doing this to, I don't know, make money out of it. It's not a job. You're doing it first and foremost for yourself, first
Yeah.
and foremost to express something, to go through this beautiful journey of creation, to transform this whatever you have into something more tangible. So for me, at least, it helps to, at these moments of crisis, I'm like, calm down. It's okay if this gets 300 likes less. That's not the real metric here. This is why you're doing this. And regardless of the outcome, you're still gonna check that goal if you finish, because the initial goal is to produce an end result.
Yep.
So blinders on, keep going. And I'm saying this and it sounds like, oh, I don't do this. I struggle so much with this. Like,
Yeah.
it's good to have it as a rule, but in practice, it's really hard to detach from all the external factors. But yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
like the
I'm
the
gonna
way to do it.
I'm gonna quickly mention one thing, and then I'll give the panel to Mehdi or Adriano. But yeah, there's this thing also about importance where giving, this is something that I've been recently reading about, giving importance to something, it can be a good thing and a bad thing, because the more you elevate something in your head, the scarier it's gonna become. And it's you, which is fine. I mean, you like doing it, so it's very important to you. You start developing this kind of a relationship with this thing, your work, your creative work. You give it so much importance, and then that can paralyze you at certain
Yeah.
times, because it's like you're scared now to make mistakes. You're like, oh fuck, this is not going good.
Yeah.
You start forming these subconscious thoughts about it, that this
Yeah.
is how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, what we were talking before, the type of expectation, no?
Yeah.
Your own expectation on your own project
Yeah.
is what also kills you.
Yeah. So the good example that was that in the book that I was reading, it's called Reality Transurfing. The good example is, and I'm sure people talked about this, but an example is treat it as if you're going to a store to buy milk. Whatever you're doing, that regardless of like
Yeah.
how important it is, the intention should be like, I'm going to a
Simple.
store to buy milk.
Ah, that's cool.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's why it's so easy to go to a store to buy milk, because the intention is very easy to form, right? I'm here, I need to put on clothes, get out there, buy the milk,
Yeah.
come back.
Exactly.
Milk.
Yeah. So
That's a really nice way to put it, yeah.
yeah. So that was it for me.
That's a really good point because that's the key. It's to go into that thing with a very, I don't want to say fresh, but like baby mind. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not this monster that is
Yeah.
gonna
Exactly.
like attack me. Because
Yeah.
it's true, once you develop you really develop a relationship with the project. It's
Yeah.
not like just a project. It's like
Yeah.
it's like this thing that scares me when you're stuck. It's like this my computer, my second screen start looking like my hard drive. It's even like an object. So my hard drive starts looking so scary and repulsive to me. And you really, it's you have emotions. And it's
Yeah.
true that the only way that I get through this is to say, you know what? I'm just gonna plug it. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna like plug it and open. I don't have to make progress today.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just gonna watch it. You know, I'm just gonna change this thing. And that's like slowly you simplify and you make it as simple as going to the store. Like you said, you like really put it down in like levels of importance and how this thing defines me and how this thing becomes the most defining like a person
Yeah.
and my value. And it's hard. It's hard, but I like that. I'm gonna do it from now on. It's like going to the store is also like now with gloves. And you have social anxiety and you live on Rambla, it's like not the most chill experience, but
Experience. Oh my god.
but the idea is there.
What you said about just opening the laptop and like not expecting much, I think it was also I don't remember which writer said that, but writing is a very requires a lot of deep work, creativity, and inspiration. And the fact that you're writing a book, for example, and you need deep focus every day, also requires a lot from yourself before doing the act. And there was a writer who said, set the expectation very low. Just open a document and don't expect to write a whole page, for example. Just write one sentence. If you write one sentence, you're successful. But once you start developing that consistency and every day you write 3 words or one sentence, at some point you're going to have, enough inspiration in you to write more, or you're going to find the right opening for the text and you're going to just keep going. Maybe you're going to go for hours, maybe you're going to go for 1 hour. But either ways, if you're doing this every day, that's your success. That's how you measure your success, is the fact that you're able to show up. It's about showing up every day.
100%. And this is another tip. They're slowly coming up. Basically, what I do when I'm stuck is I just start, and honestly, the momentum comes every single time. Every time I'm like, I can't do this. I don't have it in me. And I just go, okay, let's just open it. And I'm not disappointed. Every single time, it just takes you that one baby step to start it, to keep it rolling. Because what do we fear when we don't want to do it? It's like, I'm going to open the laptop, and what scares us is that we fail to meet that expectation that we have, that we're going to do something, like that we're going to be productive and make some progress and do something. And we're so scared that we're not going to do that we're going to be a failure, that we're going to open the laptop and fail at whatever we want to do, and it's not going to be good enough, and we're not going to make it. But honestly, from my personal experience, every single time, like 99% of the times where I was so scared and I still opened the laptop, something good came out of it. So it's basically about not waiting for the momentum to just come. It's really just like giving it a little something for it to roll.
I agree with that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it as well.
It's like I hope this is like a therapy session for a lot of creatives.
Or a good way of at least putting a type of process.
Yeah. I mean, you learn as you do it, because sometimes people are like, I'm gonna wait to be in the right mindset, and I'm gonna wait for me to have the motivation, the energy, and all of that. But honestly, like most of the times I got shit done is when I did not have all those things. It's when I dragged myself and I was like, 30 minutes. Sit here, open your laptop, don't do anything. Stare at the screen for 30 minutes. You know, just like open it and sit in your desk. Because already you put yourself in that space and it's less intimidating, it's less scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, you can't work, watch something related to this, read something related to this. Just like give something, anything.
Yeah.
And it works. It's like magic. You're like convinced, and your brain is like, there is absolutely no way in my state right now I can get something positive. You'd be shocked. You'd be surprised how like it shifts. Yeah. So yeah.
There are many excuses that we come up with in the creative process just as a form of self-sabotage. And my question is, what's a real blocker for you in the creative process? So you have some internal challenges like self-doubt, for example, and you're able now to identify, okay, it's just I'm just fighting with my demons. It's just that I have high expectations. I just need to show up, for example. But what's a real blocker for you in a creative process?
We talked about this question before, but it's really hard to answer because every time I think of something, it goes back to the self-doubt thing. For me, I would say it was not really a blocker. I would say like not having a camera, like the proper gear, was kind of a blocker for me. Just because it was more like an unblocker when I got it than a blocker. Like it unblocked something because I really wanted it so much. And once I got it, it like opened up a whole thing. I think there are things that enable you. They're not blockers, but they enable you to do it better or to do it more or to do it, in a happier way. But blockers, I feel like most of the blockers are mental. They really are. And then there are the things that are the nice to yourself. And then there are the nice to haves that just make you do it more and better. It's like this podcast. Not having the gear could be, you could do it, but having the gear just makes you do it better. It makes you do it. You're more happy you're happier to do it. You're more excited about it. So I think I had a lot of those where it's like, I don't have the right lens. Okay, it's not a blocker, but if I have it, I'm going to do much more. So it's a tough question.
It facilitates the process, right?
I mainly ask just
go ahead.
No worries. I mainly ask just to express that mainly the main issue in every creative process or working on a project is basically self-doubt and self-sabotage. I've seen the example in front of me, by the way, since you were talking about, like the gear opens up a lot of doors, but I remember the video of the skateboarding, for example. You borrowed the camera. I was with you, right? And you used your phone as a microphone. In our first recording in the podcast, for example, we couldn't record the whole thing, so we just put an image in the middle of the video. In the second podcast, we had the mics, but we couldn't have the audio from the mics. We had it from the camera, and we were like, should we do it? The guest was amazing. No, we're just gonna do it. It was better if we had the actual audio, but it's fine. I mean, we can always have another one.
Exactly.
But that's the thing. We're just gonna put it. We're improving now. We don't have many technical issues, and even when I had to move out from Barcelona, it was a bit bad because I felt that like meeting physically, it's a better experience. But just the fact that we keep pushing, no matter what challenge we have, it also helps us improve. Now we talk in a more, I would say personally, more articulate way. I was very nervous in the first one. I was using a lot of filler words. I would and just it was awful. But I'm very happy with the process and the progress as well. Well, it's the truth. It was awful, but it led me to this way. At least that I can admit.
Awful.
Well, judging myself,
I
it was,
disagree.
it's fine.
I have to agree with that. I don't think it was
This is a
awful.
space where we fight
Our
self-doubts.
Yeah.
So use nicer words. It was not the best, and it's getting better.
I'm saying
That's it.
And we can learn.
looking back. No. But without, for me, the way I see it in a positive way. Like without this first step of, even though I don't know per se what I'm gonna be talking about precisely, or what references I'm gonna bring, or how the conversation would flow, at least it led me to this point that I feel comfortable inviting a guest, for example, and talking openly about topics. Now I
Yeah.
don't stress that much about doing a lot of research. In the first one, I was quoting every writer that I can think of just to make my idea valid. But now I talk freely about things because I just feel more confident to talk about them. So that's literally the example that I'm trying to give. Is the first step is going to be hard. It's not going to be the best. It's not going to meet your expectations. But by repetition,
Yeah.
and by working on the same thing, it's going to improve, and you're going to notice the difference.
Totally. Yeah.
Because you get experiences at the same time, right? You're getting the experience of doing this, of learning from your mistakes, of improving at the same time from it. And
And being more confident.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, as much as
But
we
still,
try to
it's-
avoid
Totally.
talking about subconscious psychology, philosophy, we always lean more towards
That's
this.
the roots of everything.
Yeah.
You
So
can't-
I'm gonna ask you a question about your creative work. So I know that you work with other brands. For example, you
Yes.
had this recent project with Sierra Cafe that was amazing, by the way. And I want to ask you about how
Thank
do
you.
you work on projects with other brands, and like keep your artistic touch and your creative blueprint, and at the same time working on their brand goals.
Question.
Well, honestly, I have to admit that I have the privilege to choose the project. I mean, it's not that I have a lot of brands coming at me, but just to have the privilege to say no, for example, to a brand. So that puts me in a very privileged position to pick what brands align with my values or whatever. So I don't have to say yes to things that don't align with my style. For the example of Sierra, it was really amazing to work with them because the people who hired me within Sierra really, my friend Maher, by the way, really understand the value of what I do and appreciate it and like it. And basically they were like, we want what you do, not the opposite. It was not like, we want you to make something and me pitching this and them accepting. It was more like, this, whatever you did in License to Feel, we want something similar, but adapt it to our brand. So that was the first project. The second project was more like, we want something. It was not, they didn't have a prior example. They were just like, we want something in your style. I feel like I was lucky in this project because they really saw the value of my style and what I do. So it was very easy to pitch something and get it approved. And also, I think what helps me is that I have a background in marketing and I do branding. So I can, first and foremost, before selling them the emotion I want to create, I sell them how this aligns with their values, how it would make their audience think about. I make it very, very solid marketing wise. So I have a very strong case. And I think that's kind of the challenge, but also the beauty of what I love the most about working with brands. It's really this exercise of finding a common ground between their brand values, my style, a story they want to tell, and like creating something within this space. I think it's interesting because on my personal projects, it's like, woo, the whole world, you can do whatever you want. There are no, and it can be a little challenging to pick from everything. But with a brand, I have kind of a basis, and it's fun to work from something, to build on something, to connect the dots, to find like connections and ways to make this relatable to different kind of perspectives. So I would say, to answer the question, I was lucky to have brands who really liked what I do and they wanted that. And I'm also lucky to have the privilege, because I have my full-time job, to work just with people who have the same, who understand things the way I understand them. And yeah, I love this exercise of connecting the things. I owe it to my marketing background and creative background combination. Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. It's kind of like, yeah, I think when you start from a completely blank canvas, it can, I don't know, I feel
Yeah.
like it's a bit more difficult when,
Yeah.
unless, when you have something to work with, regardless of the challenges, it's fun to try to figure out how to put this thing together.
You have dots to connect, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But when you're doing from nothing, you
Yeah.
need to put those dots there first.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't know how
Exactly.
they will connect, but the dots are there.
Exactly. Exactly. You have some anchors, you know, you have like a,
Yeah,
okay, if I'm stuck, I'm gonna go back to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's actually very cool. I feel
Guys, do you have any
inspired by
question?
you. Thank you. I swear, I like it.
Hey, I hope you make
Yeah.
some art.
Oh my God, I'm
Go
not the
create
most
something.
creative person ever, but I'm for sure trying now.
Well, this process, I feel like it's like how you live your life, kind of, you know. This doubt, it's a similar thing in a lot of other areas. It's not just in creating art. It's having to fight the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it. The shadow is
Yeah.
a lifetime thing, and it applies in everything.
This self-doubt is also portrayed in the project that you're working on right now, right? So we had the privilege to kind of watch the draft a bit and see the process, how it's going. But I would like you to talk about this project specifically. I'm not sure when this episode is going to be released, if the video is going to be released as well or not, but give us an idea about the projects you're working on and how it's going for you.
Sure. It's interesting to talk about it at this stage, because it feels like what I shared with you and I told you, Mehdi. It's a very, I feel so vulnerable sharing something that's not complete, because it feels so naked. But I would love to quickly give you a little sneak peek. Basically, I'm working with a friend of mine, an artist as well. She's a musician and singer, and the project is about overcoming. I don't know how to describe it. It's basically overcoming the self-doubt, and it's basically about people who love something but can't really say, I love this thing, I want to do it. It's people who are very passionate, who are so drawn about something, but instead of doing it, they go and either help people do it, or hang out around the people who do it, or associate themselves with the people who do it, instead of actually saying, you know, instead of asserting themselves as, I am this and I love this. And this happens a lot with the creative people. Instead of go and do something because you're so scared of whether you're good enough, you're so scared of figuring out maybe that you're not good at it. So instead of doing it and facing that, you go and like be friends with other artists, and, or I don't know, you're in a relationship with another artist, I don't know, hang out with them. So that's the main idea. Is this friend of mine that we're doing this project together, this is her story, and basically for a long time she was running away from who she is, basically, and until recently, that's when a few years ago she realized, like, I need to do this for myself. I can't keep hiding from this. And that's the story we're telling in the video. Yeah, I don't want to say too much.
Spoil more.
That's
No more
that's a very
spoilers.
powerful message. I can relate to it. Very powerful.
It's also a
Yeah.
very interesting aspect, the exploration of a very interesting aspect of creativity, I think. And in the video, I think you're using kind of a metaphor to explain this idea, right?
Yeah.
That was very interesting.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, in my videos in general, I don't like to be very blunt or straightforward about the messages. I like to, like we said, create the emotion and let people interpret it their own way. I hate doing something like making my subjects sit down and tell their story. Oh, this happened to me and this happened to me and I did not like
Yeah.
it and I don't like that. I like to dig a little bit, find the core thing, find the core feeling, the core problem, the core idea, and then build around that in a way that is more, because the video you watched, I would love for people to apply it to different situations in their life. It doesn't have to be a music thing. Maybe the person who watches this wants to be, I don't know, a baker, wants to be a software developer, and they never got to a doctor, whatever, and they never got to do it because someone else had different expectations. I like to keep it open for people to relate to it their own way, giving hints of what the story is about, but at the same time leaving it kind of open.
Yeah, for them to figure it out, right?
Yeah, to feel
That's
it
actually cool.
however they want. Yeah.
I think that's very cool.
Because also you're allowing the viewers to like process it according to where they are right now. They could be in a
Exactly.
healing process, in a very happy process, in a going through shit process. So it will hit differently according to where they are standing in life, and that's very powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're making it
Exactly.
more accessible in a way as well to people.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly, because if you tell a story as it is, it's very limited. If I
Yeah,
tell you a specific one person's story, it's very limited and you might relate to it, but you don't become the character. This was also something that I did in the other project, I Love You Conditionally with Now. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but basically
yeah,
this girl's story is, if I told you the story, it's a very intense, sad story. But we sat down and I was like, look, now you have an amazing, inspiring, intense, like she had to deal with violence at her house. She ran away from her house. She built her life from scratch. But I don't want people to look at you as this girl who went through this. I want to communicate what you felt and the depth of what you felt, the depth of the problem. The main problem is that your parents did not love you the way you want to be loved you with conditions. So let's talk about that. We're not going to talk about how you ran away or how they did not accept you for your tattoos or how, that's details. I want people to relate to the feeling. And the feeling is so, like, where so many people feel that.
yeah,
So let's talk about the core of it, and people can interpret it in their own ways. For her, it was her parents. For another person, it could be their, I don't know, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, their, I don't know, boss, their brother,
yeah.
their whatever. So as long as the emotion and the core message is there, the story is up to the viewer to create, basically.
I love this because you're playing with the emotion of empathy, and at the same time you make it personal. So you are making two different stories and connections. Sorry, two
Exactly.
different stories and people to connect through a feeling that it has. It like the story is not the same. It's a different thing. It comes from different backgrounds, but the humans are there. The feeling is the
Exactly. There's
same,
the
and
same.
that is
Exactly.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is really,
Exactly.
really cool and very, very powerful. I love it. Yeah,
And that project
Yeah, I think a
was
lot we
masterful.
really
yeah,
thank you. I
It
appreciate
was
it.
very nice.
I
Yeah.
think that we really think of ourselves as very different, but really at the core, we really
yeah.
struggle
We're
with
not.
very similar things.
That's the thing,
And
right? That people go in life selfishly, just thinking that their issues and their life is the only
they're
thing
so
that matters or is
unique.
going through. And it's like, sorry, like, no, everybody has their own shit. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's going through hell in Earth right now. Like, instead of just like separating each other from each other, let's start embracing each other for who we are.
Exactly.
We
This
just
is
have
Exactly.
different
And
coping
that's
it's,
beautiful.
mechanisms. We all going through struggles.
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
and
it's
we, oh, and it's like it's the same movie but with different characters, with different places, with different, but like it's a very similar, you know, I mean, the storylines changed, but like the experience is very similar.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I want to target. I want to target the core of the experience. And then you can change the characters, change the time, change the place, change the language, change everything and make it your own.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's how you send the message, right? Which is super cool.
Yeah, I think
loved
all
it.
the projects were very relatable, but I think this one with Now was very inspiring. I really liked the project, and
Yeah.
I think Now also shout out to her. She did amazing in the video. But I want to ask you now because we've been talking about like self-doubt and blockers, and I think now one of the blockers that people could have is time management. So as you mentioned, you are full-time brand strategist. You work on these different projects by yourself. I assume that's after work, in the weekends, whenever you. So first of all, do you believe in like this work-life balance? And how do you manage, maybe that could be the last topic that we can all touch on. How do you manage to, like keep performing and working in your full-time job, but at the same time follow the passion and the thing that, your primal inclination, the things that you lean more towards creating, unleashing your creative side?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I have to say that I'm very blessed and privileged to have a job that really honors the work-life balance. I have a job where I'm not so expected to work 12 hours a day. I'm expected to work my hours and deliver my work, but it's a job that really that is a healthy environment. I've been in other environments where you don't have the mental space to do anything else. So first of all, I'm really privileged to have a workspace that allows me to have a little bit of practically how I do it. Like you said, it's really stealing the hours whenever I can. Having a full-time job working from 9 to 6 and by the end of the day, you're kind of like really drained. So it feels impossible to do something else. But I learned through the years that you can still do some things. You can still squeeze in a little hour. So yeah, definitely I squeeze in time whenever I can. I work in the weekends. I think the only way for me to make this happen or make it work is to accept that my projects are gonna take a long time. So people might watch a video and be like, yeah, this could be done in 3 weeks. I can't do it in 3 weeks because of the lifestyle I have. And I've accepted that and I made peace with that. Right now, I am not fighting to make something come out within a deadline because I'm like, I have a life that I can't resist the life I have. This is what I have and I have to work with it. So if this video is going to take 6 months, it's okay. Make peace with it. Don't feel pressure. No one's waiting. Who's waiting for you to release anything. You're not on a contract. This is for you. Take the time you need and don't stress yourself. With that being said, there is still an expectation for me to push myself. Who wants to work on a weekend? No one wants to work on a weekend, but I'm like, I have this commitment. I will wake up and sit myself in front of my computer for 2-3 hours and just do it. And I think it's, a balance of giving yourself, accepting that you have a certain lifestyle and you're going to do what you can do and not like kill yourself over something not realistic. And really, like we said, dragging yourself to your laptop and doing it when you don't want to do it. Yeah. Even after a long day of work, you get yourself to, you should try to at least sit yourself down. And then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But like I said, most of the time you sit yourself down, something comes of it. And something I used to do at some point, but I can't sustain, is to work before work, is to wake up basically a couple of hours before starting my job and just getting an hour done of my personal work. And that was honestly, that was amazing. It's tough, but it's one of the most amazing feelings to start your work day, passion work.
Yeah.
You
Knowing
own
that
the
you
day.
already like fulfilled something in you. You own the day. You're like, that's it. I'm fulfilled. And you don't have that pressure of, oh my God, I need to finish the day and still do something. So this one worked for me. I tried different settings. So this one was good, but it was hard because then you have to sleep early, to wake up early.
Yeah.
The other one I tried is to block my Saturday. So basically my Saturday at some point was my creative day. You don't talk to me. I'm not social. I'm not going to see anyone from the minute I wake up till I sleep. I'm only doing things related to my thing. Even if I don't have anything to do, I'll watch stuff, I'll read stuff. That's like my blocker. In this way, during the week, I get to do my normal life things and I don't have to feel guilty about not doing my creative stuff. During the week, I see my friends, I work, I go to the gym, I cook every night, all the things with no guilt because I know that on Saturday, there's no running away. I'm going to sit down and do the work. This was also, it worked. I think this is my favorite. This is the one I've been using sometimes it's hard because sometimes you have stuff on Saturday, like you have a birthday that you can't miss or you have a concert or something. But this one is the most sustainable for me because the hardest part of maintaining the balance is the guilt. Is that you feel guilty for not working on your thing. You feel guilty for not making progress. You feel bad for watching a TV show instead of working. So if you block a time when you know that this is my time, it kind of takes away that pressure and guilt from doing the other stuff. And yeah, I think it's just about doing it when you don't want to do it. Just like starting when you don't feel like it, pushing yourself a little bit and just like blinders and keep going. That's
Beautiful
like the motto of
self-discipline.
this. It sounds like I'm good. I struggle throughout the whole, it's easier to talk about stuff than actually do them. So
No, yeah,
people
of
listening
course.
or watching, take this with a grain of like,
No, it's
this is
inspiration.
not how people do it.
It should be taken
People
as
struggle. It's
inspiration.
like, exactly. It's like what you aim, but in reality, it's a daily like up and down. Sometimes you do it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you do it. Some weeks are good, some weeks are bad, and it's like a journey. Yeah,
That's life.
exactly.
That's an amazing tip.
Yeah.
You're very interesting, honestly. Like, I'm thinking about more questions over and over the conversation, but I want to ask the guys if they still have any questions for you. Adriano, Aslan?
From my side, no, I'm very intrigued and happy listening to you, to be honest.
It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I'll just say it was a very interesting conversation. For me, as a fellow creative, also very therapeutic.
Designer. Yeah.
That was very
I'm glad. I'm happy. For me too. The more I talk about this, the more I'm like, okay, I see the things that I'm doing now. Because when you're inside it, you don't really.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't feel
When
it.
you articulate it, you're like, okay, I could improve on this and this and this. And yeah, super inspiring also to talk to you guys.
Amazing.
Thank you.
That was amazing conversation for me. The last thing that I want to ask you for is if you can just give an advice to any upcoming creative or someone who feels that, they have this kind of inspiration, creativity to create something, but they still didn't start. And afterwards, if you can tell everyone how they can find you, how they can look at your projects, and if someone wants to collaborate as well, how can they reach out?
Yeah, of course. It feels so weird that I'm giving advice. It's in my head. It's like, so just figuring it out. But I would say, I think the biggest learning from my very first project is that I had no idea what I was doing. I literally had no idea. I wanted to do something. I didn't know where to start. but I did it anyways. I literally just jumped. So I would say, if I have to give any advice, I would say just jump, go for it. Start from anywhere. You don't have to start from the start. You don't have to start from the beginning. Start. Pick up your whatever you want to do and start. You don't have, if you want to make music, you don't have to start from step 1. Start from step 10 and you'll go for it. The important thing is just make it happen. Get out of your head, get out of the thinking, and get into the doing. And things will roll. The ball will slowly roll. So that's like my biggest learning from the first project, because I really had no idea. And then I finished it, bless you. And then I finished it, and very surprisingly, it was something that people liked. And also you're always gonna think less about your things than how people are gonna see them, if that makes sense. Like something will look very like weird for you, you'd be surprised how people react to it. So try to get out of your head and start doing. I know it's very, very cliche, like everyone says the same, but it's really the only thing. Like, get out of your head, start something. And what was the other question, Mehdi? I'm sorry, it was
how can
How
people
to-
find you
Advice?
to
how can
look at your projects
you can
or
find
collaborate?
me on this is the part where I promote my Instagram.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably gonna. I put most of my projects on my Instagram. I mean, they're also on other platforms like Vimeo, and I have a website. But for anyone who wants to actually just watch and understand, you can go on my Instagram. And I think you're gonna put the handle somewhere. You're gonna find the handle in
Yep.
the description.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to collaborate, just DM me, send me a message, let's connect. I don't know. Yeah, if you like what I do, make sure to like what I do before we collaborate, because I love to collaborate with people who kind of are in the same kind of understanding and how we're
Artistic
aligned.
space.
So check it if you like it. Yeah, if you like it, let's do it. If you don't like it and you think that we can do something else, you can try. But yeah, for sure. Feel free to send me a message. I'm open for collaborations. And
Great conversation.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
for
Neda.
the invitation.
Of course, we're very happy to have
Thank
you.
you, thank you, guys.
Aslan.
It was really
Thank you,
fun.
Adriano, as well. And for our dear audience, see you next time in the next episode of the Human Library Podcast.